I'm Russ Baker, the Vice President for Academic Affairs, and glad to be part of this group introducing the various criteria that the Higher Learning Commission asks their evaluators to look at when they do a campus visit. The way I see it, Criterion 4, which is the one I'm focusing on today, really gets to the heart of why an institution exists, and that is that we're regularly assessing the value of the education that we provide. There are 3 subcomponents to Criterion 4, and again, as I talk about these just briefly, I think people will see that these really get to the heart of what an educational institution should be. The first one is that we demonstrate responsibility for the quality of our educational programs. Now that sounds kind of broad, but when you look at the different specific points under that subcomponent, they really get to the fact that Ivy Tech should have program reviews that are regular, that result in changes, that we can demonstrate that we're taking that seriously. And we've done a lot at Ivy Tech with program review over the last few years. They also look at the transfer of credit and making sure that our Ivy Tech's registrar office and the people that are evaluating credit to come into Ivy Tech, whether it be transfer credit from another institution or prior learning, that we have sound practices and that we're consistent when we do that. Criterion 4B is all about assessment of student learning. And assessment is so critical to an institution that oftentimes Criterion 4 is kind of described broadly as the assessment criterion. We will be needing to show under 4B what we're doing not only to measure our students' achievement and their learning, but when we see gaps that we're addressing those through specific strategies that allow us to fill those gaps. If there's a gap, we show that students aren't learning a specific objective particularly well in a program or in a course, that we're proactively doing something about that. And finally, 4C talks about ongoing attention to retention, persistence, and completion. At Ivy Tech, we've spent a lot of time in the last few years on initiatives and things like 8-week classes just in the last year that are being put into place specifically to try to improve the rate that students are succeeding, not just in their courses, but in their program of study. So that's what Criterion 4C really gets to. Criterion 4 is the one that institutions are most frequently cited on as having some kind of a finding, meaning that could be just a suggestion for doing something different. It could be meeting that criterion with concerns or even not meeting that criterion. But what the HLC has said is that Criterion 4 is the one that most often an institution falls short on. So we know that this is one that they're going to be looking at very closely when they come to Ivy Tech.